Hey, first of all, I'd like to send greetings from the Alps to Denmark. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you today since I have appointments on the other side of the Atlantic. So we have decided to record the questions that we have discussed before and which maybe the answers might be of interest to you. I have started my first business in '99, really shortly after I graduated from university as an engineer. My first business was a business where we developed and manufactured membranes for removal of pathogens from drinking water, ultrafiltration membranes. It was back in 1999, and I had no idea how to start a business. So really my father pushed me to write a business plan and file the business plan to the Munich business plan contest. And well, we did not get awarded one of the first seats, but we managed to create a network, and I found an ally, a business angel, who then helped me to raise venture capital. And in the next years, we built a manufacturing place in southwest of Munich, and we started to manufacture product, we started to get approvals, we started to build sales. When we wrote the business plan, we figured that we might need 3.5 million euros of venture capital, which back then, to me, sounded like a huge amount of money, and we really had no idea where to get 3.5 million euros from. Well, initially we found two investors, a strategic VC, RWE Ventures. RWE is a big multi-utility company in Germany, which back then owned Thames Water, the water supplier of London. And we found a little mid-sized company from Germany who was extending its business into what we made, water filtration. So 2002, we managed to get our first round of financing into the company with 3.5 million euros venture capital. And the first years until 2005, we managed to build the company up to 2.5 million in revenue, which equaled basically 1,500 filter elements that we manufactured and sold to system integrators worldwide. What we found out is that in many regions, it was really not enough to sell only a core technology, because we could not get approvals and we could not win projects. So the discussions we had internally were whether we should become a systems company rather than only manufacturing membranes. And over that discussion, we really got into a very intense fight on the board, and that made me leave the company in 2005. So in 2011, the company sold for 70 million euros to BASF, a big chemical corporation based in Germany, which really was a 7 times revenue multiple. So I would say it was a very successful sale, also for our investors. Right after, I founded my next company, a company that was focusing on building plug-and-play units around the core technology of membrane filtration, because in my first business we had noticed that many of the drinking water supplies were really relying on product they could buy off the shelf and that then would be installed by plumbers and installers. And those people are used to order product from a catalog which they could buy and bolt up against the wall and then wire it up and plumb it up. And only a core technology was just not cutting it for them. So we manufactured little water treatment systems that would comply to regulation, and that were available anything from 1,500 euros to 100,000 euros. So little villages down to lodges and alpine shelters. For their drinking water supplies, we were making product. So this second company, Secure, also based in the vicinity of Munich, we managed to get approvals from US EPA, and we managed to sell to all different regions worldwide. Mainly our markets were in Germany, of course, and in the United States, where we really traveled all the regulators to market and sell our products. But I had decided not to work with venture capitalists in my second company. So we were really relying on business angels and private financing and government grants. So while in my first company, we managed to raise millions and millions, finally in the end, my first company, Inge, had raised 16 million euros. My second company, Secure, we raised 2.5 million only. And we were kind of financed like on a shoestring. And that, of course, influenced how quickly we could build up sales and how sustainably we could build up our sales routes. So after running the company for 10 years, no, really more, 15 years, we were getting involved with a strategic investor by the name of Mann & Hummel, one of the leading oil filter manufacturers for combustion engines, who in 2022 then bought the entire company out. And again, at a very good company valuation. So again, it was north of 6 times revenue, which we managed to achieve as a company valuation. What does it take to start and fund and build and sell a water company? Well, first of all, I think you have to be very passionate about what you're doing. Passionate about providing clean and safe water or closing the circulation loop of water to people. Building a company from scratch, from only a business plan or maybe a little prototype you have, is a long project. And what it definitely needs is perseverance. There will be hard times. You'll be running out of money. And many times, actually, in our cases, it was not really sure if we could pay the salary to our team of the next month. What you really need to make sure, though, is, well, of course, you need a product with a strong, unique selling proposition. But what you really have to make sure as well is you have to be sure about the business model that you're pursuing. Who are you selling to? Whose problem are you solving? Are you solving a problem for the end user? Are you solving a problem for a commercial customer? That you have to be very clear about. One thing that we figured out is we have been active in regulatory markets. So our technology was really forced into the market through regulation. And that is really difficult because in the end, you end up with customers that don't really want your product, but they have to have your product. And that's really something that makes selling difficult. And another thing which is linked to regulatory markets is that you have no influence about how quickly regulatory rules and regulations are put into place. In our case, We have had the opportunity to sell our product according to the enhanced surface water treatment rule in the States. And we were also very confident that this regulation, because it made absolute sense, would be transferred to Europe soon. But that was in the year 2000, and still today the regulation is not here. So the influence onto regulation is far beyond your startup capacities. So one thing I noticed twice in both of my companies is that it is very easy to develop product. It is very easy to build a production facility up or to build production processes. What is really difficult is to develop your sales channels. Because, one thing is to sell single pieces as a founder to somebody. Of course you can do that because you're very passionate about your product. But how do you scale that sales then up with all the passion and all the enthusiasm that is linked to it? And this is something that we found is really difficult. Very often you're a one product company only. You have only one product to sell. And how do you build an effective sales channel around one product only? I have to say that we have had difficulties in both companies doing that. So that is one very important consideration that you have to think about. And that also leads me to the last point, really, is the most expensive part in building your company is building your sales channels. So how much money can you really pick up, and how much money should you pick up from investors before you exit and sell your company? That's a question which needs to be discussed thoroughly, but also very honestly. My ambition always was to build a world leader in providing clean water to people. But we also found, I would say in the first company we raised 16 million euros. The first couple of million were to develop product and to develop the production. But in the end, what we figured is for each million in revenue we were able to build, we needed to raise 1 million in capital. So we raised 10 million euros in capital to build 10 million in sales. And that is not really, that value you're adding is not perceived in the same scale. In my first company, Inge, we had two major corporate VCs on board. The first one, RWE, came in with the first financing round. RWE is one of Germany's largest multi-utility companies. They owned Thames Water, London's water supplier back then. And we brought Siemens Venture on board. From both relationships, our expectation was that those smart money venture capitalists would bring us more than only money. They would bring us relationships, they would open us doors, so we could step through those doors and maybe get to revenue. But during all the years that we have worked with them, none of that realized. In my second company, in Secur, we brought a corporation really on board, Mann & Hummel, as a direct investor. They invested off their balance sheet. Mann & Hummel, 2 years ago, started to diversify into the air and water filtration business. And our hope was, again, that Secur could profit from that strategy and be a part of the bigger picture. But also then, for Secur, it ended up that Mann & Hummel really bought the entire company. Of course, we also had worked with institutional investors. And to us as a management or as management team, it was always relatively easy to know what they were looking for. They were looking to grow the value of their investment. They were looking to make money with the money they had invested into our businesses. And that's a motive which is clear. So what's the biggest lessons learned throughout all those 20 years of building water businesses? One important lesson that I learned is that things, especially sales in water, in regulated water markets, scales much slower than you expect. And building up sales is much more expensive than you expect. That is, I think, one of the most important lessons I take away from that. And as a consequence, the question that rises is, at what point in time should you sell your business off? And, my recommendation at this point from all the lessons that I've learned is a good point in time when to sell your company is just when you entered into the first growth curve and when you start to step onto the stage and big companies get aware of you. This is when I received the first quote for my first business. Back then, that quote was not really bad. It was 2 times the money that was invested. So we received an offer of $8 million for a business that had received $3.5–4 million funding. So why didn't we sell back then? We couldn't sell back then because the shareholder agreements that we had closed did not leave any proceeds of such a sale, such a potential sale for the founders. So that is also one of the lessons learned, is that you should structure shareholder agreements with your investors in a way to enable also an early sale of the company. So in both of my companies, we had very strong products with very unique sales propositions. We always managed to get our first references and approvals quickly and to get out into the spotlight. And we always managed to raise interest of big market players. And I think what I really should have done differently is I should have sold the companies off earlier. And the final question, who wins in water, is difficult to answer. Water is a vital resource, and its availability and its quality is declining globally. So I think we're in a desperate need for new technologies and for entrepreneurial people that work on improving that circumstance. I've worked with a guy that invested all of his talent and money into technology providing clean water and clean energy to little villages in Africa. I would say that he's definitely a winner. Then, there are companies like Brita who make it easy for people to treat their water at home at very low costs. I would say that those companies are also winners, even from an economic perspective. So the passion you need in order to start a business, successfully build a business, and finally exit a business and contribute to making water safer and more available to people is something that is urgently needed. And all the entrepreneurs that pursue that clear idea or vision they have with all the perseverance needed, I would say have the potential to win in water.